Hello friends, my name is Pankaj Sharma. I am basically an agricultural engineer and a postgraduate in rural management from the Institute of Rural Management Anand. I also have additional professional qualifications in cost and management accounting from ICWAI. I have 35 years of experience working with the National Dairy Development Board, NDDB, and Mother Dairy Fruit and Vegetables Private Limited, Delhi. While my core competency has been in financial planning, budgeting, and management information systems while working with NDDB and Mother Dairy, I also have solid experience of working in the space of cost optimization and enterprise risk management, that is ERM. I spearheaded the design, formulation, and implementation of ERM process at Mother Dairy as its first chief risk officer, and post my superannuation from Mother Dairy, now I am working as a freelance consultant and helping various dairy companies in implementation of cost optimization and ERM. Friends, however, I have realized one thing, that there is very little awareness about ERM in dairy industry, primarily because of two reasons. One, it's a fairly new subject, and number two, it's not statutorily mandatory for most of the dairy organizations. However, having implemented ERM myself in a large dairy project, I'm quite convinced about its effectiveness and far-reaching impact on the industry and the organization. I strongly believe the dairy industry, which deals with an essential daily consumption item like milk and other dairy products, and impacting millions of farmers and crores of consumers, would immensely benefit from this initiative. With this in view, I have put together a presentation on ERM and sincerely hope that it will prove to be quite informative and beneficial for dairy professionals and entrepreneurs. For ease of understanding, the whole presentation has been divided into 5 distinct modules. Module 1 is concept of ERM and its differences and the differences between traditional risk management and ERM. Module 2 talks about importance of ERM in dairy industry. Number 3 talks about organization structure for ERM process. Number 4 details the whole ERM process design and its implementation across the organization. And number 5 module talks about risk appetite and risk tolerance, risk metrics of an organization. This PPT is based on my practical experience as CRO and available literature on web, which is immensely available, and I've tried to cull the relevant portions in my presentation. I have tried to make this presentation as simple and practical as possible and hope that I have been able to do justice to the task which I have taken upon myself. Now let's move to the main presentation. In case you find it useful, please do not forget to like it and subscribe my channel so that you keep on getting notifications about my future updates. For a detailed discussion and implementation of ERM in your organization, you may get in touch with me as per the contact details given at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. Whenever the word risk is uttered in the context of an organization, the thought that crosses our mind is about financial loss, fraud, embezzlement, theft, etc. However, this is only a very small part of the whole gamut of risks an organization or an entity faces. Though exposure to any kind of risk, be it strategic, operational, hazardous, or financial, ultimately has the potential to result into a financial loss, merely focusing only on financial impact may not do full justice to the practice of enterprise risk management. There are certain risks that impact the reputation of an organization and tarnish its image. Maggots in chocolate impacting image of a famous FMCG company, adulteration of milk impacting the image of scores of dairy brands, etc. Then there are some which threaten the very existence of an industry, like emergence of mobile camera proving a death knell for conventional camera and film roll industry, or premature death of pager industry, or hazards causing permanent closure of a business like Union Carbide factory at Bhopal. And last but not the least, financial fraud risk impacting financial capability and the credibility of the organization and the entire industry. Ila Satyam. Before going into the main topic, I would like to give some background. Due to high involvement of the promoters in business activities, either at strategic level or in day-to-day affairs, business performance is better in a promoter-managed company or organization. One major reason is that due to explicit or implied concentration of power among family members, they are able to take quick decisions and respond to the market demands. Promoters are continuously monitoring and protecting assets of the company due to their own stake in the business, and hence, generally family controlled business make investment in conservative manner or are aggressive in employing assets to generate business revenue. Personal stake in the business makes it more efficient in employing asset on use. Family-based companies are more efficient in terms of restricting the cost or expenses and hence could generate higher profits using unit assets. However, there is a downside to this. This may also result in a conflict which generally happens more frequently and in higher magnitude in family controlled business. It has been found and has also been established by various studies that there is comparatively more severe problem of corporate governance in family-based businesses as compared to professionally managed and controlled organizations, which are listed in stock exchange. The above has the potential to take a toll on the corporate governance in precisely for this reason and to obviate the risk of a breakdown in corporate governance. It has been thought prudent to introduce enterprise risk management or ERM as a discipline in the organizational management. Now let me briefly touch upon the risk management. Now, what is enterprise risk management? Since time immemorial, when the human enterprise began its journey, the organizations and other entities like households, religious institutions, governing bodies, educational institutions, etc., have been exposed to various kinds of risks and have been dealing with them in some manner or other, depending upon the available resources, understanding, and the context in which the risk occurred. However, all such efforts generally tend to focus on an event and are mostly reactive, action taken after the event has happened. Enterprise risk management, by contrast, is proactive, all encompassing, process driven, and self sustaining. Sporadically, some of the more proactive and progressive organizations had been practicing ERM in some form or the other for some time. But ERM as a discipline came into focus in India only in the late 2010s. Following the scams and frauds which came to light, like Satyam, Enron, etc., and impacted the collective consciousness of Indian industry and regulatory authorities, it was thought prudent by the regulatory authorities to make it a part of the statute to further enhance the corporate governance. Now, corporate governance is the acceptance by management of the inalienable rights of shareholders as the true owners of the corporation and of their own role as trustees on behalf of the shareholders. It is about commitment to values, about ethical business conduct, and about making a distinction between personal and corporate funds in the management of a company. And here, enterprise risk management can play a major role in enabling the management safeguard the corporate governance principles in an organization. Now, enterprise risk management is a methodology that looks at risk management strategically from the perspective of the entire firm or organization. It is a firm-wide strategy to identify and prepare for hazards with the company's finances, operations, and objectives. It is a top-down strategy that aims to identify, assess, and prepare for potential losses, dangers, hazards, and other potentials for harm that may interfere with an organization's operations and objectives and lead to losses. ERM takes a holistic approach and calls for management decision making. While any established organization, irrespective of its nature, be it a company, a cooperative, a government department, an educational institute, etc., follows some risk management procedure. The traditional method lacks the punch and effectiveness and is very risk-based and siloed approach to management. Now let us look at how traditional ways of risk management are different from enterprise risk management. Uh, in the slide, 7 distinct differences have been delineated. For example, traditional risk management only looks at insurable risk, the risks which can be insured, meaning thereby which can be uh, whose monetary value can be assessed and then insurance taken. Whereas ERM also takes into consideration all non-insurable risks also. Traditional risk management is a one-dimensional assessment. It looks at one dimension at one time. Whereas in the ERM, the multi-dimensional assessment is carried out. We will get into details of all these differences in the subsequent slides. Traditional risk management manages risk one by one risk at a time, whereas in ERM, all the risks are analyzed together and also to be seen how they are related to each other, how they impact each other. Traditional risk management, on one hand, is a siloed approach, means people work in silos and they will look at the risk in their domain only, whereas in the ERM, the holistic view is taken by all people put together. TRM by nature is reactive and sporadic, means when the event has occurred, the TRM will kick in and will try to find the mitigation plan or some rescue plans. Whereas in case of ERM, it is a proactive approach and it's a continuous monitoring method, continuous review method, and continuous scanning of the environment method. TRM is a disjointed approach. It will be people will be looking at it in some corners of the organization, whereas the ERM is an embedded process which is across the organization and it is embedded in the culture and mindset of the organization. TRM is a risk averse method, whereas ERM is a risk taking method. Now let us look at insurable versus non-insurable risks. Insurable risks refer to the risks that the insurer covers or makes provision for. These are those risks against which it is possible to collect, collate, calculate, and estimate future losses. It is possible to forecast and measure this type of risk. For example, motor insurance, marine insurance, life insurance, etc. This is the type of risk in which the likelihood of an occurrence can be determined from past data. For example, you can determine the probability or chance that a vehicle will be in accident in year 2023 by looking at the number of vehicles involved in accidents during previous years out of total accidents, total vehicles involved. Or you can determine the probability of number of leaky packs in a packaging station in year 2023 by looking at the number of leakages or the extent of leakage in previous years out of the total packs manufactured in a factory. On the other hand, non-insurable risk is a type of risk that the insurer cannot insure against because it is impossible to predict and calculate the future losses. And the other interesting part is it can be both a source of loss or gain, but it is impossible to predict and measure this type of risk. So, for example, in the earlier example of leaky pans, there is a possibility that the current production method or current packing method may become obsolete or out of date by next year due to technological advances. Other examples could be all risks that are related to natural disasters are referred to as act of God, such as earthquake, war, flood, etc. And an insurer cannot compensate any property, building, or life loss that is insured and then lost due to an act of God. This non-insurability also applies to radioactive contamination, for example. The other significant examples could be launching a new product. A manufacturer who launches a product cannot guarantee its acceptance as it hasn't been tested earlier in the market, or loss due to inefficient management. Management success depends on many factors. Profitability and loss depends on how efficient you manage your organization. Inefficiency cannot be covered. A poor business location, for example. Anyone who places a business at a low quality location should know that it is unlikely to succeed. But this is how you can fool an insurance company. Insurance company will not know. So they will not insure that. Profit loss due to fall in demand. Product demand varies with the passage of time and other factors. A decrease in demand will not cause an insurer to insure. Insurance company will never say I will insure if there is any loss in demand, or opening a new office or a new shop. It's also considered an uninsurable risk. It is impossible to predict what you can expect from the operation of a new shop. One dimensional approach looks at only the impact of the risk occurring. At times, it may also consider the probability of the event happening. However, the major focus is on analyzing the impact and find a mitigation for the same. For example, workers sitting on a wet floor may prompt a supervisor to put a signage around it, cautioning people. This may also prompt the manager to take an accident insurance policy to cover the medical expenses or damages to be paid to the worker in case of similar event happening again. On the other hand, multidimensional assessment on the other hand will also look at the consequences of the above event in other areas, as well as the behavioral aspects of the people involved in the particular risk and its mitigation. In the above example of wet floor, the attempt will also be made to have a relook at the shop layout, floor design, and the workflow so that the possibility of water holding onto the floor and floor remaining wet for a longer period of time is also minimized. The above, however, is a simplistic example. The third dimension also looks at the behavioral aspects of the risk and its mitigation. It proposes to make thoughtful investments in smart systems that anticipate behavior. These systems include compensation schemes, sales incentive, bonuses and merit rewards, and other forms of recognition, as well as appropriate reprimands for bad behavior. Smart systems go well beyond compensation and rewards and include technology. However, how departments collaborate, hiring practices, skills and development, and other holistic approaches. Idea is to put systems and processes in place to ensure that risk occurrence is minimized with overall organizational purview. Managing risk one by one versus analyzing material risk and how they relate. Traditionally, a risk emerging or occurring in a section or department of an organization is managed by that particular department with exclusion of others. For example, sourcing department will try and manage any current or coming shortage of raw material on their own for the fear of being criticized as inefficient. However, when the dimension of the crisis becomes too large and unmanageable, letting other departments like production and sales becomes too late, and the consequences are borne by the entire organization. Similarly, plant team would like to limit taking action on any production related issues to themselves till such time it could be managed without realizing its impact on both the back end and front end operations. In material risk management, every such event is considered material which can have an organization wide impact, and it is managed by setting up processes and systems involving a cross functional team which looks at the issue as a whole and solves it. Siloed versus holistic approach to risk management. Traditionally, the risks are managed in silos. That is, department, section, location specific risks are managed by a specific entity without considering its impact on other areas of the organization as a whole. For example, finance department will only worry about timely completion of account books, an implication of delay in filing returns, whereas sales team will try to delay the day closing for sales on 31st March so as to book as much sales as possible on last day. Both are working for the good of their department, but the clash between two may either result in loss of sale or statutory compliance issues. Holistic approach, on the other hand, would consider the following: organizational structure to understand the risks across silos, management framework and policy management, analysis and measurement framework or metrics. This approach often spends the most time on defining specific risks and developing risk profile to understand the impact of the risk. Financial impact is just one of the key metrics when analyzing or scoring the risk. Other risk factors include velocity, likelihood, importance, control strength, and responsiveness. Reactive and sporadic versus proactive and continuous risk management, or rear view approach versus forward view approach. Reactive risk management tries to reduce the damage of potential threats and speeds up an organization's recovery from them, but assumes that those risks, those threats will happen eventually. So one fundamental point about reactive risk management is that the disaster or threat must occur before management responds and bases the experience works out the strategy to avoid potential future risk events. Whereas proactive risk management identifies threats and aims to prevent those events from ever happening in the first place. Proactive risk management strategies include identifying existing risks to the enterprise, business unit, or project, developing a risk response, prioritizing identified risks according to the magnitude of their threats, analyzing risks to determine the best treatment for each, implementing necessary controls needed to prevent risks from becoming threats or events, monitoring the threat environment continuously. Proactive management strategy gives you more control over your risk management generally. You can decide which issues should be top priorities and what potential damage you are willing to accept. This management also involves constant monitoring of your systems, risk processes, cyber security, competition, business trends, and so forth. By understanding the level of risk prior to an event, you can educate and instruct your employees on how to mitigate them. This approach drives management to be always aware of the direction of those risks. Disjointed versus embedded. Any organization is going to manage risk to one extent or another. However, in traditional risk management, the risk management activities are disjointed or ad hoc with no rhyme or reason or connection to strategic objectives and other business units. This ad hoc approach causes risks to be missed, create new risks for other areas of the organization, or end up duplicating effort, wasting the organization's resources. For example, the marketing department embarks on a project to accomplish a certain objective and maybe takes a few moments to identify any risk to the project. Another example is the organization reacting to some sort of negative event like a product failure and having to identify action steps and necessary people instead of having a prepared plan of action in the event a product failure occurs. Instead of these random discussions, a key goal of enterprise risk management is to embed the idea of risk in every fabric of the organization's culture and mindset. ERM process addresses risk to strategic objectives and uncovers opportunities. The idea is that the risk has to automatically be a part of business conversation at all levels of the company and get embedded within the culture and mindset of the organization. It becomes just another part of the business conversation and decision making process. Risk becomes so embedded that it becomes just another part of the business conversation. No separate meetings or call outs are required. By extension, another benefit of this naturally occurring discussion about risk means that the very idea of risk no longer carries a negative connotation. The end result is that everyone from top leaders in the organization all the way down to business unit managers and employees has the tools and knowledge to identify, assess, and manage risks. Empowerment in this sense also means accountability. Not only do people in the organization need knowledge, tools, and the encouragement to include risk in their decision making, they also need to be held accountable for those decisions. Risk averse versus risk taking. Traditional risk management focuses solely on losses and follows risk averse strategies. Any business has to take risks in order to be successful. At the current pace of change in our world, which will only accelerate as time goes on, companies who simply avoid risks and fail to take calculated, informed risks to improve business performance will not remain relevant in the long run. ERM, on the other hand, considers both the upside and downside of risks and encourages risk taking. It helps executives make informed and intelligent decisions and provide a framework for others to follow to ensure the organization is taking the right level of right risk. And this is a fundamental difference between traditional risk management and ERM. Now, let us look at under what circumstances the establishment of ERM process is prescribed in the law. The Companies Act 1956 did not contain any mandatory provisions relating to risk management, whereas the Companies Act 2013 placed specific expectations on important stakeholders in a company, namely the board of directors, audit committee, and the independent directors in relation to risk management. The relevant sections are Section 134(3) and Section 177(4) and Schedule 4 referred to by Section 149(8). Now, let's look at Section 134(3). It talks about director's responsibility statement and it says the report by the board of directors to shareholders must include a statement indicating development and implementation of risk management policy for the company, including therein identification of elements of risk, if any, which in the opinion of the board of directors may threaten the existence of the business. Contravention of the provisions under this section could attract penalty ranging from 50,000 rupees to 25 lakh rupees for the company, and for every officer in default, imprisonment up to 3 years or fine ranging from 50,000 rupees to 5 lakh rupees. Section 177(4) refers to the terms of reference of the audit committee, and it says the terms of reference that audit committee shall act in accordance with the terms of reference specified by the board, and the terms of reference shall include evaluation of internal financial control and risk management systems. As far as Schedule 4 referred to by Section 149(8) prescribes the code for the independent directors, and it says that independent directors should satisfy themselves on the integrity of financial information and that the financial controls and the system of risk management are robust and defensible. So, so the Companies Act very clearly states and delineates the roles and responsibilities, the legal requirements for the three major stakeholders, that is Board of Directors, Audit Committee, and Code of Independent Directors. Apart from that, SEBI's guidelines also prescribes as below. Clause 49 of the listing agreement for company says SEBI's guidelines for listed companies under Board of Disclosure says the company shall lay down procedure to inform board members about risk assessment and minimization procedures. These procedures shall be periodically reviewed to ensure that the executive management controls risks through means of a properly defined framework. SEBI's update released in 2014 prescribed constituting a risk management committee in each of the top 100 companies by market capitalization. That was in the initial phase. But over the years, this number has now increased to 1000. And as the system matures, it's highly likely that ultimately it will cover the entire gamut of listed companies and also private limited companies and other forms of organizations.